invited Niki to talk about her experience building or crafting an AI-first product design process. So Niki is the head of design at Legl. So very, very excited about this talk, very timely, and I know there was a lot of sign-ups. There are a very high number of sign-ups because I think at the moment we're all changing and transforming the ways that we work. And Niki has been doing that for a long time, for the new ways of working, and it's going to be really interesting. So yeah, Niki, I'll hand over to you if you can share your screen, and then we'll start the talk.
Great. Can everyone see this okay? Any thumbs up? Great. Yeah, just want to say a massive thank you to Mariella for inviting me back. I think it's about 8 years ago that I last did a talk at UX Oxford, and what a very different world that was. So yeah, it's nice to be back and seeing some familiar faces in the chat. We were a bit nervous it was just all going to be bots that were signing up when we saw the sign up list initially, so hopefully there are some real people out there and you can enjoy the talk. So yeah, I guess one of the reasons why I wanted to do this talk, I don't know if any of you have been linked in LinkedIn recently, there is just so much nonsense and gumph about people claiming to use AI. They've created like a prototype on Lovable, and then they claim to be experts on it and giving lots of opinions. So I just thought it'd be really interesting just to share, the findings from the ground, what we've done, what we've learned from it, what works and what doesn't, and hopefully there's lots of takeaways and things that you can find useful from this. So a little bit of background about me. So yeah, I'm head of design at Legl. Legl is essentially, well, compliance and payment software for law firms. If you think when you sign up for you're trying to buy a house, the law firm that you use has to do quite an extensive amount of background checks on you and the money. The reason for that is there's a lot of money laundering in the UK with property, so there's lots of regulations that makes the law firm do all these extensive checks. So yeah, Legl basically does a lot of that background checks for the law firm, as well as many other things, and automates that process as much as we can for them. For Legl, I was at What3Words for 4 years. That was a fascinating time. I was there for the big growth of the What3Words project as it went global. So trying to make the app accessible to that massive international audience in over 54 languages, I think it was in the end, was just an incredible learning experience and a great thing to be part of. My side hustle, everyone's got a side hustle these days. For any Oxford locals, I do a website called caliroad.co.uk, and I just sell t-shirts and hoodies in my spare time because everyone needs a fix outside of work to try and make a bit of pocket money, I'd say at best. Anyway, that's me. So what am I going to talk about? What we built, how we built it, what works, what doesn't, and then at the end I'll go for some bold predictions which are going to be almost certainly untrue, but maybe provide a bit of direction. So yeah, bit of background. So this was the setup at Legl this time last year, well, even later than, I think till about July. So quite a small company, 4 squads, each squad's got designers, one designer, 1 PM, and then a few engineers. It's quite kind of fluid, everyone kind of moved around squads quite a bit, but generally that was the setup. I sat at the top of this, oversaw a lot of the design work, and then was quite hands-on in one of the squads as well. They didn't have much front-end work at the time, so it was quite light, but yeah, generally that was the setup. We had a really great design team. There was only 4 of us. They'd all been at Legl a really long time, had lots of experience, and we worked really, really well together. It was really collaborative. That was our strength as well as our weakness, because the problem is once one of them gets poached, then the others got ideas as well, because they see plants the seed, and within 3 months we'd actually gone down to just me. Within that time we could have recruited straight away, and we probably would have kept the others. The problem was we just had no idea the skill set that we now needed, and what I was more terrified, I was slightly terrified about the idea of going into it without a design team, but I was more terrified about the idea of recruiting someone that we didn't actually need in 6 months' time because they didn't have the right skills. So did a lot of back and forth, and we decided, look, let's just go all in and let's just see what happens if we use AI first and just use that to fill the gaps with a lot of design. We know there's going to be problems, we know there's going to be gaps, but we'd much rather recruit knowing exactly what those gaps are rather than trying to recruit preemptively and then having to make any redundancies. That was the #1 thing we just wanted to avoid. So what it became was essentially design was spread out across all the squads. PMs and engineers are responsible for creating the designs. I do a lot of sort of quality assurance and everything, but essentially they're responsible for creating the designs, managing feedback within those designs, iterating on them, and doing it themselves. And the way they do that is using the AI tooling that we've built. The reason this has worked is that we just had so much enthusiasm from the PMs and the engineers. This wouldn't have worked if they hadn't been like that and wanted to do it. But yeah, one of them reached out quite early on, was like, I want to do this. They could sense that's where the market was going, right? That there's going to be more of a mix of skill sets. Engineers couldn't just be engineers anymore. They needed to sort of diversify the skill set. So the reason it has worked is everyone was behind this from the beginning, which is great. Where are we now? So everyone in the squad is able to create their designs, high fidelity designs, pulling from the design system, using AI. And when I say using AI, I mean using like an LLM to create the designs and then iterating on it for them. I'll take you through all of that in a second. I guess the impact of this is, one of the biggest impact is that it's reduced the calendar days from when we create a design to when we deliver it. So beforehand, because designs took so long to do, we were doing them well ahead of when the engineers would actually get around to building it. So weeks, even months ahead of time, just so we had lots of time to explore them, come up with different concepts. And what that meant was a lot of design got wasted, because by the time you actually get to build it, decisions have changed, roadmap, things move around. So yeah, a huge amount of the design work that the team was creating was never actually getting to production. What this has allowed us to do, because we can create designs so quickly now, is we only create the design like the day before or even on the day that the engineers are due to start building it. So there is no waste. There is no designs that, well, there's different concepts maybe that don't see the light of day, but there are no project work that doesn't get built, because we only build it when it's ready to be built, if you see what I mean. What this has also meant is the role of design has massively changed. My role, I guess. So it still is providing quality assurance, making sure that everything goes out, still meets the same quality and standards that we'd expect from previously. However, it's now much more about training and creating and optimizing the tooling to make it better. So when something gets shared with me that isn't good enough, you have to question, okay, is that just training? Do we need to go back and help the engineer or PM, like, understand where it's gone wrong? Or actually, is there some optimization of the tooling that we could do to make it better so it doesn't make the same mistakes again? So just being constantly involved in that process and making it better and better. So how did we get here? So all started July this time last year, and I'm sure most of you anyway, the designers on the call were very excited about this big release from Figma, Figma Make. We had to go with it straight away, and we're like absolutely glued. So this allowed us to create these really great high fidelity prototypes in minutes or hours rather than days. This is such a step forward from where the Figma prototypes were before, where you had to create artboards, you link them together, you sometimes had like variables and things, but the whole thing was just an absolute nightmare. So yeah, when this came back, we were like, this is it, this is the future, and we were super excited. What this allowed us to do, as I said, create high fidelity prototypes super fast, like way quicker than what we'd ever been able to using Figma or using any other tools before. So that was just incredibly exciting. What we quickly found out, though, is it worked great, except we couldn't collaborate on the same project. As the setup that we had at the time, it was different designers. We all wanted to be able to collaborate. If someone created something for their feature that we're working on, I wanted to reuse it on mine. Like, it just didn't work. There was no sort of strong collaboration feature. They might have it now. I realize it's probably come along a lot further since then, but this is, to be honest, the main sticking point that we had, is we couldn't all work together on the same project and grow it together. Also, it was a real bugbear. I don't know, they might have fixed this as well, but we couldn't overwrite the code. Everything had to be done via text prompts. This was fine at the beginning because we didn't want to go near the code anyway. But as we got more confident on it, you just wanted to be able to change like a H2 to a H3, change a bit of copy. The idea of having to do all of that via the text prompts was just like, felt incredibly slow. It did actually let you change the code, by the way. It just then overwrote it the moment that you did another prompt. So it was just a bit of a nightmare. So what we decided to do is move everything that we'd created in Figma Make into Bolt. Bolt was just further, it was a very similar setup, but it was just further down the road in terms of feature parity. You could collaborate on the same project. It could all push and pull to GitHub, so that was how the collaboration worked properly. And just, you could edit the code yourself. It was just much more advanced than where Figma Make was at the time anyway. You see it's the same kind of layout to the UI. You've got your chat in here, you can see what it's doing, and then you've got the preview on the right hand side. So a very similar kind of setup, to be honest. What we used Bolt for was we created the full design system that we already had in Figma. At the time, again, it might be better than this now, but at the time all we did was create screen grabs from the Figma components and told it to build it. The more you add, the better it gets. Obviously, once you've added in all your typography or your colors, it's then able to help to pull them. So the first few components that you do take a while. By the time you've got to the end of your design system, it's really rattling through it really, really quickly. So once we've built our sort of design system in code, we then built a replica of our platform just using screenshots. Again, the more you do, the quicker it gets. But by the end of it, we could literally just take a screen grab of a few of the sort of core screens of a user journey, add it into it, and it could build it, and it could link it up, and it could do it, almost instantly. It just got better and better, which is great. The other really great thing that it was able to do for us is to create a database in Superbase. So my coding knowledge at this time was very, very low. I kind of got the idea that you have a database and that's where all the data lives and that can populate the designs and everything. Really very, very low knowledge, but it kind of guided you through that and meant that you could start to save data. This really elevated the level of, well, the realism, I guess, of the prototyping. The problems that we'd had before in Figma, where you just kind of click through it and it's just very like a linear journey. All of a sudden, you could create a contact, you could see like all of the impact that would have like throughout a user journey. Tables could get updated, you could pull through different things and just really play around with it as if it was a real product. So that just made the whole prototyping process just much more realistic, and just meant by the time things got to production, they were all much better validated, I guess. This was great, but the only bugbear with this is that we couldn't link to a private GitHub team repo. So our workaround with this is that we all logged into the same GitHub repo so it could be private, which kind of worked, but it was a bit hacky and our IT security guys were not happy about us sharing a GitHub account. So after a bit of back and forth, we decided to move again and we went to Cursor. So if any of you have come across Cursor, the UI down below, it is very developer, like it's aimed at developers, right? It is this, terminal land, dark screens, lots of code. You obviously do get the preview still, but the whole interface of it is really designed for developers rather than designers. It has come along a bit since then, but yeah, you get the idea that this is a much more intimidating environment when you first start. So yeah, we built it in here, and this is great because all we needed to do was just point cursor at the GitHub repo that we'd already built in Bolt. So there was no moving of code or anything. We literally just started using that GitHub repo. So we were able to use it straight away. There was no painful migration or anything, which is great. And yeah, because this is using a proper GitHub repo by this time, we could push and pull from it as you can do with normal production code, which is great. Yeah, same collaboration capabilities as production. Probably the best, the reason we really went for it is that the engineers are already using this. So they were the ones that we really wanted to get on board and to be able to sort of create the design. So the fact that they were already using this tool and already familiar with it was just a no-brainer for us. So I thought I'd take you through a little bit of the prototype, the playground, just to show. Okay. Cool. Can you all see this okay? Yeah, so this is what I've called the playground. So all of this we've had to build ourselves. There is no like customer management system or anything else that like powers this. It really is all been coded from scratch. So the first bit item we've got is our prototype. This is our dashboard. Hasn't had a lot of love in a while, but you get the idea that this is a real replica of the platform, and you can complete all the same actions that you can in here that you would in the main platform. Yeah, not particularly exciting. Obviously, don't want to go too much down that road, but yeah, you get the idea that this is our complete replica of what we have as our main platform. We then got a design system, probably similar to what you probably used as Storybook. Again, we built all this from scratch. That sounds a lot more painful than what it was. I mean, all the components are already built by this point. We created a component for a showcase one, then asked it to create them like the rest of the design system based on that format, and it just rattles through it. So yeah, once you've got a few and you're like, this is the level of information, this is the functionality you want to be able to have, it can just use that and it can just rattle through and create all of them. So yeah, hopefully nothing too different about all of this. It's kind of, yeah, this is a design system that you'd expect anywhere else. Then design concepts. This is the bit that's probably taken, yeah, it was the biggest shift from Figma. So if you imagine when you create a design in Figma, and you can create a few designs side by side, you can sort of explore them independently, and you can just see them all together. That's obviously a lot harder when you're just designing, one thing. So what we created was a good example like this. So this all of these designs don't pull from the database. This whole design concepts area really is just about experimenting with a few different layouts side by side. So you can see here, someone's come in, they've created a few different versions, and you can kind of see the evolution. Like you start with design 1, then you want to create an alternative one, you might go back to design 1. Yeah, it's just the kind of same workflow that you'd imagine in Figma, where you can explore a few different ideas all together. This really is just about experimental with layouts. Like you're not experimental with the full journeys at this stage. It's just sort of rough ideas. What we've had to do as well is add in things like commenting. All of those things come built in with Figma, and it's great, and you've kind of got really used to it. You have to build them again in here, which was painful. This is probably the bit that was like, yeah, the toughest thing to swallow, is that there is no built-in things. I did look at third-party tools, but none of them quite worked how you want it to. And in the end, rather than trying to implement something that's not quite right, it's like, let's just spend a day and let's build it exactly how we want it to. So yeah, there are lots of things like that that you are going to have to think about properly, because otherwise how can people add comments to it? They create screen grabs and go somewhere else, and then all of those comments are sort of lost. So yeah, there is a whole thing there, which was a bit more trickier than what we'd expected from the outset. So yeah, let's design concepts. Then you've got the prototype settings. So once you've done your design concept and you're like, yes, this is a great design, I want to try it in the main prototype so I can actually see the whole user journey, plug it into the database. You then still might want to have 2 designs, or you want to have the original one and then you want your new one, and then you want to be able to flip back and forth. So that's why I've created the prototype settings. And yeah, all of these ones are just different versions. So you can click the different one, you can save it, and then when you go into the prototype, you'll be able to preview that version. So you just got quite a nice, easy way of just flipping between designs or, well, journeys, if that's what you want to use it for. So that's the prototype settings. Emails isn't very exciting, it's just some of our templates. I'll use a journey creator tool I'll show you in a second. The main other thing probably that is quite interesting is our database manager. So again, we did have to build this from scratch. So yeah, Bulk built our nice Superbase database for us. That was great, but we had no way of like being able to edit the tables. We could run on a Superbase, but then long story, we moved it so it's in a different place, which didn't have this sort of table editor functionality. So that's what we built, and it does mean that in the database, if you just want to see what your design looks like, you know, with different data, you can just change it here, and that's going to update it there. So just being able to have that kind of functionality just means, yeah, all of your little tweaks and just previewing different versions is just much easier. You can edit the table yourself. So that's that. I'll go back to my presentation. Cool, back here. So yeah, that's essentially what I've built. Here's the good and the bad and what works and what doesn't. So the first thing is designing with real data is just really dreamy. If honestly we lost access to these AI tools now, this would be the bit that I'd find hardest about going back to Figma. So this is one of our very old watch list screening reports. Just a bit of context. So this is a watch list screening report for Annalise Dodds, our local Oxford MP. And if you do a report on her, you just want to see, you know, if there's any background on her. She is a politician, she's a politically exposed person. So you basically have to go through and say yes or no, is this the client? So if she is a client, obviously she's a politician, so she requires more due diligence as a result of it. That's a bit of background, but anyway, the long and short of it is you've got a really horrible long report with lots of data, and we can't really do anything about that. There's just going to be lots of data that we need to surface. The idea of doing this in Figma is just wild. You'd have to copy and paste all of the data in manually. I don't know, maybe they've got tools that can do that a bit better, but then once you've got it, if you want to then see what it looks like with a completely different set of results, what's that going to look like? What's it going to look like if all of these are clear? You get the idea of just like being able to preview quite a complex design with lots of data really quickly. It's just really painful to do in Figma. And the result is that you'll probably create your design, you might do 1 or 2 like the extreme edge cases. You then give it to the developers, they'll build it, and it will look almost nothing like what you designed when it gets into production. And that's just a real painful process for everyone. So yeah, the fact that you can design with data in a database just makes it so much easier. So what does this look like? So you can say to Cursor or whichever AI program that you're using, create a database schema for the monitoring reports based on the data in this PDF. So I literally took that PDF from our production, gave it that, fed it into that. Once it's done that, you can then say, update my design so the data is populated from the database. So whatever you've created initially, it then can go through, match up all the labels to what you've got in the database and populate it. And from then on, you're just running, right? So you say, add a new database entry based on this report, give a new report with different results in it, and instantly you're able to preview your design with wildly different results, which is just amazing. So yeah, this whole journey is one of the most useful things about the whole process, to be honest. One of the bad things, AI doesn't think outside the box. So if you were to give a human designer a brief, you'd expect them to come back with something like this. Version 1 would be the safe option. They'll probably come up with a version 2, which is the viable alternative, and version 2 is the wildcard. Realistically, the wildcard isn't going to make it through, but it is just all about, flexing the creative muscles, coming up with something that might be completely different. It might not get used to this. It might spark some ideas that come off later down the road. It's just generally good practice, right, for design that you come up with this wildcard. If you were to give the same brief to an AI, it would come up with the safe option. If you nudged it enough, it would come up with a viable alternative, but it's never going to come up with this wildcard. It's never going to come up with anything completely different that it hasn't already learned and seen, within your design system or anything else before. So yeah, this is probably one of the most obvious downsides. I mean, a lot of people see this and they completely dismiss it. And they're like, yeah, that's why AI is no good. But if you think about it, if you're building a design team and someone applied for the job and they say, look, I'm not the most creative designer, but I will take everything you say and I will execute it absolutely to the T, and I'll do it 10 times quicker than anyone else. You'd be like, okay, you still got a job, but I'd sit you next to a designer that is more creative and maybe is a bit slower, and hopefully they can kind of rub off on each other. So knowing what the weaknesses are from the outset, I think is fine. I think it might get better at doing the wildcard, unlikely, just in the way that it's built to sort of detect patterns. So just being aware of what its weaknesses are from the outset, I think means it's still an incredibly useful tool. What is good is that you can, once you've got control of the code yourself and you're able to run with it, you can then create automated testing. And this is really, really great. Again, I don't know, they've maybe got some plugins that you can do this in Figma, but this took half an hour to get the AI to build for you. So these are all the checks that I've created so far. Our capitalization policy that we try and as best we can enforce throughout the platform is sentence case, and it can just detect anything that's in the UI that is not sentence case, and it can give you a warning. Again, with colors, trying to make sure that it's always using the colors from your design system, typography styles. AI tries to add borders to everything. It's annoying, even though you've given it all the rules and told it not to, it'll still try and add a border on it. But what you can do is then get it to run the check, and it will correct itself and realize that they've used the borders incorrectly. Other things like checking it's using the right icons. It also loves to add shadows to everything. And yeah, you can just give it the rules. You can say only components that are interactive, or only components that are overlaying other components, that kind of thing, need shadows. And you can just tweak the rules to go to it correctly. So yeah, so when I said earlier that one of my main jobs now is improving the tools and the checks, it is kind of these things. It is looking at the design that comes out, being like, no, this is wrong. Can we add a check to make sure that this doesn't come out again, and it can correct itself as it goes along. So yeah, this is great. And this is just, yeah, it's been your job as a long time, right? As a head design, you're kind of built in to check for these things, but the fact that all of this is done for you, and then you can check the actual things like the user experience and some of the bigger things, just means, yeah, you're not wasting time correcting typos and things like that. So this is great. The bad thing is we spent a lot of times moving things around and refactoring things. So yeah, the journey, as I've sort of shown, we started off in Figma Make, that built the very initial things. We then moved that over to Bolt, which is hosted by Netlify, and that's why we had our Superbase, got that set up. We then moved it to Heroku, and this is our main tech stack that our production uses. The reason we did that, so there's a lot of back and forth with the security guys at work. They initially said it's because it's more secure. After we queried it a bit, we realized it wasn't actually more secure. They were both very secure. There was no concerns about that. What they sold me on, though, was if it's in here, it's then their responsibility. So if there are any data leaks or if it goes down, I don't have to worry about it. So making sure, people that are already well experienced in creating a platform that is secure enough for legal technology, I mean, yeah, they know what they're doing here, and handing over that responsibility was really worthwhile. So yeah, we moved it there. What we then realized is that so the playground was built in React, just one of the tech stacks. I won't go too much into detail about that, but it was built in React. We then realized that our main production code is in Vue. They don't speak to each other very nicely. So we then went through the incredibly painful job of getting the entire playground to be migrated into Vue, so that the two tech stacks were aligned and could be friendly. The whole handover process will be a lot better. So, and then the final move is, so initially this was its own GitHub repo. What we've done in the last 2 weeks is actually move it from the main GitHub, from its own GitHub repo into the main production GitHub repo. And I'll show you why we've done this in a second. But yeah, as you can see, we've moved it lots of times. Every time we've moved it, stuff breaks, you have to fix it. Some things don't work, some things get lost in migration. It is painful. If I just to do it all again from scratch, I just build it here. There is, downsides to it being here. It's obviously the pipeline to make sure, stuff doesn't go in here that can break anything else is much stricter. But where we've got to now, yeah, this would be a much, much easier process for us all. So where we've got to now is, initially when we created the playground, it was like, it doesn't matter what the code is, it's just all about the UX. So this is just a sort of rough prototyping thing for testing and playing around with. Don't worry about how good the code is. What we found though is the code now is getting really good. It's actually better than production in a lot of places because it's been created using better standards than a lot of the dusty old code in production that's been in there for a very long time. This is a good thing. It's also a bad thing because now once you've got your really highly, high fidelity prototype that is great and everyone's loving it, the idea of that having to be rebuilt somewhere and migrated somewhere into a different repo and have to, refactor things just feels crazy inefficient. So what we've now done, so this is the original. So we had the playground repo with its own database that was in a separate repo. We then created an import CLI sort of tool that could look at what was going on in here and then could rebuild it here. It worked okay, but a lot of the nuances and, you spend ages sort of come out with all the different edge cases and the sort of fidelity bit. That was all getting lost when it was rebuilt in the main repo. So what we've now done is I've renamed it the kindergarten. The playground has been upgraded slightly and it now lives inside the main repo. What this means is it's still in its own sort of nice contained app that I can sort of do changes on, and it doesn't have to go through to the main code base because it's not client facing. It's all nice and secure and kind of tidied away. I can still use the kindergarten database as well. So all the changes I want to do, I don't have to worry about breaking anything in the production database or anything. I can just play around there as I would before. But once it's like, yeah, okay, right, this is all good, we can move this, we can deploy it. The engineers then pick it up, they promote it to production. All that really means is they move it from one folder into another. They do all of their adding the testing, making sure it's using all the right endpoints, all the other things that they need to make it production ready, and it's deployed. So that whole process, I mean, obviously making it completely production ready might take a bit longer, but there is no migrating, there is no rebuilding. It is just ready to go. And essentially the idea starts from a really rough design concept, and this gets better and better and better until it can go out into production. And it is the same code that's getting improved. We're not having to rebuild everything. So yeah, as I said, this is fresh off the bat. It's only been about another, a week since we finished this merge, but this is where we're going with it. Yes, this is where we're going. So the idea is that, we create our design concept with static data. So just playing around that idea that I showed you earlier, where you could have multiple tabs, just experimenting with different layouts and different concepts. It then goes into a high fidelity prototype linked to the local database. So you can play around it there, just make it, a bit more real. And then the engineers come in, they promote it to the main app, they link it up to the main database, they have all the tests, and then they can release it. So that whole process is just almost seamless. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it can go out. That's what we've been aiming for, and that's what we're pretty much there with it, which is brilliant. Another benefit of this whole process, sort of outside of the actual prototyping, is this really has just been a gateway into coding. So I've done a bit of coding before, dabbled around with a bit of HTML, CSS, but nothing really. Like, this has really just opened up the taps for something that was just felt completely out of reach before. So this is a screenshot of our the design team GitHub commits to production, so not to the playground or anything like that, to actual production. So you can see this time last year we're doing the odd one, just like small bits here and there. So we had a really, our head of engineering was just super behind this and did want us to be able to do these things ourselves. But you can see quite nervous, got a bit more confident, and then sort of November, December time, we were really running with it, and we're able to make our own changes to the main code base because of all the confidence that we learned from using the playground and just from being empowered by using AI to help us work our way through the code that we just would never have been able to do before. What this means though, so all of those small ones that we started off at is, yeah, everyone is probably very familiar with something like this, right? You've created your design, you spent ages making it absolutely pixel perfect, it's been reviewed, everyone's super happy with it. It then goes into where the engineers build it, and it's okay, it's good, but there's just lots of small things, like it uses sentence case when it shouldn't, the button's on the wrong side, there's a random button here that shouldn't be here, all of those kind of small nitpicky things. No one likes this phase, right? I feel like I'm marking someone's homework. All the engineers have done all the hard part. They just want to move on to the next project. They don't want to be going through and doing all of these small tweaks. So what it now means is that myself or even the project managers are now able to go in and make these changes. So that whole design review process is just gone. So the process now looks more like this. So the very beginning, the ideation with squads, that's everyone. As we kind of model through what the problem is, what we're trying to solve, and why we want to sort of start with a solution. The refinement and validation, I oversee it, I'm kind of involved, but I'm not doing the hands-on work. That's the engineers and the PM. So they're the ones tweaking it, refining it, sharing it with customers, getting feedback on it, doing more testing on it, and just sort of, you know, the natural iteration that a design requires. The engineers then are responsible for the build of it. The acceptance testing, that's everyone that comes back in just to check, you know, that it does do what we initially said it was going to do. And the engineers can then do a soft launch. Obviously, everyone's got their own interpretation of what a soft launch is. For us, it either means just releasing it to our beta users to check that they can start using it in their own environment. It might just be putting it out there and waiting to see if anyone notices it. But yeah, we just kind of put it out there and just wait to see what happens. At this stage, I can then go in and I can do my design polish. So this is what was previously the review, but I just do all those bits myself now. Change the icons, change the spacing, all of those bits that, yeah, to take the design from good to, yes, done, as far as the design's concerned. Then we do the hard launch, and that's just, by that time, all the work's done. It's just a case of the project manager going in and turning it on for all of the law firms, all of our users. So yeah, kind of looks a bit more like that. The other benefit this has given us is just the idea of building other tools that can help us within anywhere else in the design process. So I can actually give you another demo. Share this. So this is a tool that we built towards the end of last year. So one thing we're doing really bad at is creating user journeys. So the design team, the PMs and the engineers, they were creating user journeys, but they lived in like Miro boards and they all had wildly different levels of detail, different layouts. They're really hard to find. They're almost buried in lots of underneath all the other sort of squad work. And yeah, they're really only useful to them. Anyone else outside of the squad that wanted to work out what's going on, it was really, really difficult. So yeah, we had to go at just building our own user journey tool, and it's completely custom to what we need. So they can do it, they can select which user it is, what platform they're using, and they can link it up. Just things like this, like you can see where the problem is, which is no one's creating user journeys effectively. Could we use someone else's? There's nothing that really does it. Actually, let's just have a go at doing our own. This, to be honest, is something that I did in my evenings and weekends. It's a bit of a hobby project, but even now, like, yeah, you get the idea that we don't have to just accept problems. We can come up with solutions to them. Go back to presentation. Another tool that we've come up with is all of these glossy icons that you've probably seen throughout the presentation. We've been creating these for the last 2 or 3 years. Just as we need them, we just create them. What we've now got is a library of over 150, which is the perfect number for training an AI. So yeah, there's a website called foul.ai, which just basically does that whole process for you. So I just exported all the icons with all their descriptions, gave it to the AI, and it trains it, and then you can create a generator. So yeah, you can just go into this is hosted in the playground as well. You can put in the prompt and it creates an icon for you. It's okay, this is more of a gimmick, to be honest, but it does just show some of the problems, which at the moment I'm the only one in the company that can create these icons. Can I make that process faster? Yes, if I can come in here, it can generate a few ideas for me. I can then create it. The only problem with this is it only exports PNGs. AI has not conquered SVGs yet, so there is still some work to do with it. So as I said, this one's more of a gimmick, but again, you get the idea. How can AI just fix some of those bits in the process that are just really manual, or all reliant on one person? This I haven't started yet. This is one of my dreams. So as with any sort of product company, we have to create go-to-market material. So all the glossy images that you're going to see in LinkedIn, on newsletters, on the website. When we were using Figma, these were easy enough to create because the designs were already in Figma, and we could just take them, we could simplify them, gloss them up a bit, and that was done. Now that all of the design work is happening outside of Figma, like actually in code, we've creating these, and suddenly you have to recreate it all from scratch, which is incredibly painful. So yeah, we haven't cracked this yet, but just to say that's the next thing on the radar is like, how can we use the tool to create these images for us, where the AI already knows the feature that we've got. It's got as good an idea as anyone as to like what the key pages are, what we should be highlighting. And I don't think there's any reason why it can't do this, but yeah, that's the idea. So if anyone wants to have a go at this, what you need, first of all, is a bit of time. I was really lucky that our senior leadership was behind this from the beginning, so I was able to sort of ring fence some time just to dive into it. You do need that. You're not just going to be able to do this in the odd, hour here and there. You do need just sort of a block of time just to get things going. You also need money. Again, you need budget from senior leadership. Like, AI is expensive. I don't want to think about the amount of cursor credits that I've burnt through in the last 3 months alone. Like, yeah, you do need a dedicated budget for it. Again, because our team left naturally, we had a bit more budget, and the budget that we're spending on cursor is nowhere near as much as a human designer. So there is that, but essentially, yeah, you can't do this without time and money. And you also need, well, as well as buy-in from senior leadership, but I'm kind of saying that's a given, but you really need buy-in from the engineering team. You can do this on your own, like the work that I was doing within Bolt. That's kind of independent of the main code base, so there's no reason why you can't do that without engineering support. Where we've got to now, though, where we've moved it inside the main code base and all of that work, there's no way I could do that on my own, right? You do need someone who absolutely knows the code base, know how this is going to fit in, and can help you just understand how this is going to work. So again, luckily, we had a head of engineering who was really encouraging the designers to make their own code commits way early on, like sort of early last year. We then had a VP engineering joined, and he was the one that looked at the playground and was like, I want to be able to deploy that. So he had that vision of like, let's not have it as an independent thing, let's move it inside it, and let's just make that production ready code. So having that support from engineering, I don't know how well you could do without it, to be honest. So that's just a key thing. So coming towards the end, my bold predictions for the future. So first of all, just the way that we design is just different now. Like when you're using text prompts, there is no flow state. I used to love those afternoons where you had a design brief and you'd put your headphones on and you just go into this state of just creating different concepts, refining them, exploring them. And there was just that like lovely afternoon where you didn't even know where the time went because you just been in the zone doing it. You don't get that with using an LLM. You put in a prompt, you wait a really awkward amount of time, it then does something, then you come back again, and there's just this kind of stop-start to it. I mean, yeah, I don't know if AI is going to get better or get faster, maybe a bit of both, but it is very much like you're having to read something, you're having to interact with it. The flow state's gone, and I think that's just something that we might need to accept. I think design teams will get smaller, but there will be more designer builder jobs in companies that maybe didn't need them before. So our team has got smaller. We've gone from 4 designers to just me. That's still quite short time though. I think we all recruit once we're starting to understand now. We've got a much clearer idea of the skills that we need before. But yeah, I think there's in companies that before would have outsourced it or would have just used, their own bought in someone else's, will now be self-building. So I think there are going to be more jobs. And I would say the jobs that are there are going to be super interesting. I think my role has changed massively. I'm not just managing and kind of overseeing. You get to be a lot more hands-on. And there's just, I was speaking to someone else who's done a very similar process to this, and she said it's the most fun she's ever had over the last 6 months is creating this, thinking about what the problems are you can solve, and actually getting to build it. I always felt like that was something that you fell short. You did all these designs and then you never really got that like playing around with it in Figma that you can do now. So yeah, I don't think there's any way of avoiding it. There are going to be less jobs. There's no way that you can believe the LinkedIn hype though that design jobs are dead. Like that's just not the case. Like there's no matter how well you build the tools, there's just that level of refinement and knowing what's good. Taste as well, like AI just doesn't have taste. So all of those things are just going to be incredibly important, even more so important than now than ever. When anyone can create a design, how do you make a design that stands out? You need that experience from a designer that's been doing this a very long time. I would say that to that though, I did read an article, I think from the design team at Claude, that was saying actually graduates are now more valuable than ever because they're so new and so fresh. Graduates coming now have never used Figma. They're just coming into it. This is their only background, right? So there's no learning curve or changing. They're coming straight into this and they're going to come with a completely different perspective and way of doing things, and that's going to be super valuable. So again, all the hype about graduate jobs going, I don't think that, I feel like in the short term maybe, but in the long term, yeah, there's definitely going to be a market for people that are going to come in with a completely different perspective than us that are the dusty old dinosaurs that have been using Figma for however long. And I would say as well, again, there's a LinkedIn hype that we won't need interfaces anymore. Everything's going to be done by a chat prompt. Like, that's just not true. Like, Cursor isn't a complete chat prompt. You can go in, you can change the code. It's got some buttons. It's got some level of interactivity. To rely on everything out the chat would be incredibly painful and slow. And that's one of the reasons why we moved away from Figma. So this hybrid approach, if you can do some in the chat, basically use the chat for the stuff that you don't know how to do, and the stuff that you do know how to do is probably quicker for you to just do it. So it's that kind of mixed approach. I really think that is going to be more the future rather than this whole everyone's going to be using ChatGPT for everything in the future. I just don't think that's the case in reality. But yeah, they're my bold predictions. They're almost certainly going to be untrue, but let's see how that goes. Final slide, I promise. Yeah, I thought I'd leave this with you. The most dangerous thing about AI isn't its intelligence, it's its tendency to agree with you and convince you that you're right. So again, going back to that design earlier, the brief earlier, where you give a brief to a human designer. That human designer is going to say, why are we doing this? This isn't going to solve the problem. This we should be doing instead. They'll sort of question you, they'll validate you. It's going to be that really awkward designer that just, drags their heels and then comes up with something brilliant. AI is never going to do this. If you give it a design brief, it's going to say, this is the best brief ever. I can't wait to do it. It's got that almost like fake enthusiasm. So just knowing this and just using it correctly and knowing where its flaws are and knowing that it's not going to challenge you in the same way a human would, that's really where the value is, I think, for humans. Yeah, I thought I'd leave that with you. That's it. Thank you, everyone. I hope there's some useful takeaways from that anyway.